Hello, I'm Peter Fisher and I'd like to introduce you to a rather different new style of pepper grinder that I now make. As you can see from this small selection, I have made a number of traditional all-wood grinders in varying sizes, testing different mechanisms. Then a friend showed me a set he had bought which were mainly glass, and so had the considerable advantage of being able to see what and how much of it they contain. But they don't really appeal to those of us who prefer to see more of the beauty of natural wood. So I came up with the idea of combining both attributes, incorporating a clear perspex tube section into a wood-turned body to achieve the best of both worlds. I now always use the crush grind model of grinding mechanism, which is far superior to those made of all metal, with their top fastening screw, which is ineffective at controlling the coarseness and fineness of the grind. Crush grinders have a non-corrosive ceramic grinding mill, guaranteed for 25 years, with multiple settings from coarse to fine, without a top screw fastener. I then found just the right internal diameter perspex tube, which is available from the Clear Plastic Supplies company, into which the crush grinder fits perfectly. You will need a timber blank at least 65mm square and a minimum of 210mm in length. Mount the squared end you prefer to be the top of the grinder into a large jaw chuck, and then turn as much of the blank as possible to round. If you don't have a large jaw chuck, you could turn a spigot on the top end first. Mark a line 75mm from the bottom to accommodate the grinder mechanism section, then mark a 6mm width for parting it off, and a further 70mm for the middle body section. Right, now to drill the first hole, 25mm diameter, all the way through the accurately measured bottom and middle sections. Then we need a 45mm hole through the bottom section and just 15mm into the middle section. Personally, I prefer to drill such a large hole in a couple of stages. So first I widen the 25mm hole to the required depth with a 35mm bit. Finally, I then change to a 44mm auger, which makes light work of the job. I find it's much quicker overall and saves unnecessary and excessive wear and tear on the auger bits. The clear perspex tube is 45mm outside diameter and it must fit snugly, so I find it best to carefully adjust the hole's diameter with a side scraping tool, ensuring that the tube fits tightly in place to its full required length of 100mm. Now a shallow groove has to be cut 20mm in from the end, using a tool made by Crown especially for the purpose. This is to form an adhesive ring to bond the perspex tube in place. It's a very good idea to round off the inside edge to make finger and thumb access to the grinding mechanism's adjuster screw an acceptably smooth opening. It is now a good time to sand and finish the bottom and the inside edge, which will not be easily accessible later. I then use a 7-inch length of standard plumbing 1.5-inch internal diameter PVC waste outlet pipe, which with sufficient layers of masking tape applied around it fits tightly into the 45mm hole. One layer spanning across the junction of the bottom to middle sections and another near the end of the bottom edge of the hole. This dowel, fitting through a hole drilled in the pipe, provides sufficient twisting purchase to both tightly fit and remove the pipe. A tailstock mounted revolving cone centres the pipe. The central PVC support tube in place, both the bottom section and all but the top 15mm of the middle section can now be turned to their final chosen shape. Because that first ring of masking tape was wrapped to form a tight fit quite close to the tube's end, it straddles the junction, allowing these sections to be parted right through to the tape cleanly. And they can now be pulled apart to expose the parting cut edges, allowing access for the necessary fine tooling, sanding, wire burning and finishing. Now remove the completed bottom section. The revolving cone is brought up to go back in the middle section, which, although not yet complete, is also parted off. Now remove the large chuck, keeping it still holding the end of the top section, and fit a pin chuck to be expanded inside to hold the bottom of the middle section. Now drill a 38mm hole in its top to receive a spigot which is yet to be formed on the base of the top knob. Round off the corner where the 38mm hole meets the 25mm hole. This creates a slight funnel shape, making refilling the grinder easier. Personally, I like to drill a shallow recess, allowing the 25mm diameter flange of the shaft turner item to seat flush. Then I change to a 22mm bit and drill to an overall depth of 25mm to accommodate the remainder of the body of the turner. Using the special grooving tool, cut a 5x5mm groove, starting precisely 18.5mm in from the bottom of the knob to take the 3 sprung catches. I use a 25mm bit to deepen this hole in case the shaft needs to extend further in, but do check that you don't drill in too close to the top of the knob. Mark a pencil line to make the 38mm spigot, cutting down in stages. Keep trying on the middle section, trimming a little at a time until it fits quite tightly, which is necessary at this stage. Support the middle section with the large revolving centre. Because the two sections fit tightly together, we can turn down each side of the join to a common diameter. And then we can sand down the spigot until it is a slack fit and rotates easily. Now, for the first and indeed the only time, we need to remove the knob from its large chuck, which is all that remains of the original mounted blank, and to remount its spigot end in a suitable smaller chuck. For extra support, it's best to bring up a simple jam chuck held in the tailstock with a revolving centre to finish turning all but the very top end of the knob section. Only removing it to complete the rounded end with gentle fine cuts. Next, sand this section, working your way through all the grits. A simple fine detail line adds interest to the domed top. A coat of Chestnut's cellulose sanding sealer buffs up to a good hard shine, which is further enhanced with solid carnauba wax and a final burnishing. This completes all the wood components of the grinder. Mark a fine line initially around the outside of the 45mm Perspex tube, set 28mm in from the end for a groove to be cut on the inside. Groove is to receive the snap-in catches on the grinding mechanism. A rough chattered floor in the bottom of the groove is preferred as it stops the mechanism from rotating. The position of this groove is critical, so do double check it before proceeding. The previously cut groove in the bottom section requires a shallow matching groove on the outside of the tube for Gorilla Glue to expand into both. Notice it must not be cut too close to the inside groove. Again, a rough finish is a benefit, and neither groove will be visible on the finished grinder. At this stage, it's a good idea to do a test assembly, as any slight adjustment is best done now. Offer the grinding mechanism set up on a suitable thickness spacer to ensure there is adequate bottom clearance, and check to see if the shaft needs to be shortened. If the shaft is too short, the Perspex tube would have to be cut down. Otherwise, cut one or preferably two shallow grooves on the outside of the top of the Perspex tube. Set about 5 to 10mm in from the end which is to fit inside the middle section. Fit the grinder in the tube with the catches in the groove and check it doesn't rotate. Apply a fine spray of water to dampen around the adhesive grooves and wipe off any excess. Gorilla Glue is the ideal adhesive for this job. Carefully fill the groove in the bottom section and remove any excess, slightly recessing it into the groove. Now you can fit the tube along with its grinding mechanism in through the top end of the bottom section, twisting it into position with the domed grey adjusting screw, finishing 2 to 3mm in from the end. Now apply Gorilla Glue to the two small grooves at the top of the Perspex tube. Wipe off excess and recess as before. Then twist fit into the bottom of the middle section, and be careful to remove any overspill on the Perspex tube immediately and very thoroughly. Turn a disc with a rounded recess covered with a soft cloth and fit the turning mechanism into the bottom of the knob with a soft-headed hammer flush with the bottom of the spigot. Finish the assembly by pushing the turn knob into place. Do a final check on the bottom adjuster clearance. So there we have it, the finished grinder for pepper, salt or any of the many herbs and spices it is capable of milling. Although my design involves making 4 separate component parts instead of just the traditional 2, my method sequence aims to cut out much of the time which would otherwise be spent repeatedly having to remount individual sections. I do hope you will find the finished result an interesting project, and that if you decide to make these, that you will find this video helpful.